Oh, yes, real music. Look at that, mint condition. What kind of man would I be? That is actually one of my favorites. My favorites, who am I? DJ LP. I am here on Passion Radio. Thank you for joining me. I hope you're okay. I hope that the weather is beautiful wherever you are. And I hope that regardless whatever time of day it is, your life is fine and you are just feeling nice and airy and sweet. I personally am feeling that way, and I have got somebody really interesting that I am really excited to introduce to you today. My friend, somebody I yes, you, somebody I think that I can confidently call a good friend and a colleague, Robin Watson. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing fine, and mint condition. You touched a great nerve there because they're genuinely one of my favorite bands. So great start to that, and I too am feeling airy, as they would say. I'm feeling good, and I'm enjoying the weather. So yes.
Lovely. Okay. Wow. So, we've been speaking to each other for a little while now,
Uh-huh.
and we find our connection in the funeral industry. And every Monday, 2 till 4, this is what I dedicate this time for, talking to our brothers and sisters who are in the funeral industry, regardless of how little or much interaction they have. I too am in the funeral industry, and my interest really is on grief as well as the end of life, the funeral, and the whole service that is provided. My passion is to educate our brothers and sisters because we are missing somewhat from the industry. So that's another reason why I just want to introduce you to everybody. You have two businesses, one being, or maybe I should just let you say what they are.
Well, essentially, it's the one business with two services that we offer.
Okay.
The primary business is Procession Plumes, and essentially what we do, we work very closely with funeral directors to give additional value to the service they provide. The plume itself as a product, people normally see it on the horses. There's splendid things in the horses.
Yeah.
What we do is supply those so that they actually go on the cars. So if you have a procession of 3, 4, 6, 7 cars or what have you, then the plumes are actually attached to the top of the cars by means of a suction cup. The great thing about it is that it's something that you cannot miss. You've seen some of the images and some of the videos,
Yes.
and they truly are splendid. It also gives the family an opportunity to really personalize their funerals because, as we know, funerals nowadays are more of a celebration of the person's life. And without getting too statistical, there was a survey done, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, and 54% of the people surveyed, of which I believe there's over something like 2,000 plus, actually said that when they pass, they actually want their life to be a celebration and not mourned. So a little bit of interesting information for you there.
Beautiful, thank you. And I agree. I believe that traditionally, historically, our funerals or our end of life services were a celebration of life. I think that we typically see it as some form of an elevation, a transition perhaps into something else, another form of existence. So, I do want to touch more on the plumes, but let's just go back to you and how you found yourself in this industry. So I know that you've sort of you've come from a big family, quite a religious family as well.
Yeah.
Uh, can you tell us about a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. When I start, I'm the second youngest of what was 8 siblings, which is now 2. I lost 2 sisters, one in 96 and the other one in 2014. And I'm the second youngest. And no, I am not spoiled, despite what you think. Um, and born and raised in the church. Church of God of Prophecy. My dad was a prominent minister in there for years, literally all my life. and he passed away sadly last October 2022. But he'd been a minister, he'd been a superintendent, he'd been a treasurer for the church. He was a pastor several locations. So done the whole pastor's kid thing. So yeah, that's essentially my background from a religious point of view. And in terms of an answer to your question, was it something that got me involved in industry? I can honestly and truly say, no, it wasn't. Not at all. It was, although my dad conducted loads of funerals services as a minister and all the rest of it, so I've seen it as from an outsider's point of view in terms of someone being in the crowd.
Yeah.
But the way I got in this industry was a gentleman who was the person who actually invented the plume, by the name of Darrell Edgar, and his wife Grace. Grace was very close to both of my sisters, and she's a longtime family friend, almost like a big sister.
Yeah.
And long story short, they started the business. I had no idea what they were doing, in that regard, and then invited me to help them out, because at that stage I was working for the Chamber of Commerce as a business advisor. So of course, I went in as a small business advisor, the friends, but went in as a small business advisor, and they didn't let me out. So, that's how I got involved in the industry.
That is really interesting, because I actually thought that the Plumes were like a real traditional old English norm. I thought that they were a staple of the funeral industry. So did they invent them then?
Yeah, just to sort of touch on what you said, you're quite right. Plumes were, if you do your history, you go back to sort of Victorian times, plumes were very significant in funerals.
Right.
And a big part of it in terms of the cortege. And the more plumes you had back in those days, it signified wealth.
Wow, I can imagine.
And here's another tidbit for you. Abraham Lincoln, I believe, when he passed away, he had plumes on his funeral procession, even though we had nothing to do with that, because I certainly wasn't around in those days, as old as I may look. But no, in terms of the plumes themselves, no, they didn't devise the plumes, but what Darrell very cleverly did was come up with the idea of using the plumes to help keep the procession together. Because for him, as a young man growing up in Leeds, Darrell's retired now, but he remembered the plumes, seeing them go along on horses and what have you along the cobblestones. But all of that's gone, and I'm sure every single funeral director in the whole country will agree that at some point they've experienced some sort of negativity from other drivers on the road, either cutting into the procession, cortege, sometimes because people just don't care, and in fairness, sometimes because they don't know. So what this is, it's a clear visual marker that any car that has the plumes on it is part of the procession. And what's great, we've seen a great response in terms of drivers actually saying, and I mean, as in funeral drivers actually saying they've noticed that people, and I've seen this for myself, actually wait at roundabouts. When they have right of way, they've stopped at the roundabouts and literally let every car that has a plume on it go through.
Perfect.
So from a funeral director's point of view, what it gives them just that little bit of assurance that, they have a better chance of people not cutting in. They've used flags, or you've seen the flashing headlights. People don't notice the plumes. You can't miss those. And then from a family point of view, it's a way of, going back to what I said about celebrating the person's life. It's a great way of doing that because it's available in over 145 colors. We've done football themes, Jamaica, national flags, heritage, all sorts, you name it, we've done it. So, yeah.
Gosh, okay. It's also, I think, a bit like an authority, if you see I was going to say a trailer load of cars. If you see a procession of cars, then you stand to attention, don't you? It's like, wow, something is happening here. And when you come across a funeral that is so sort of defined in that way, it kind of makes you think that the person must have been really important,
if I can just interject there, it's funny you should say that, because each time when the plumes have been used, some one of the most common feedbacks that we get, apart from which was really great and all the rest of that, which is always nice to hear, is the fact that, you know, it felt like a state funeral.
Yeah.
And we did one in Cambridge, the company called Peas, Good and Skeets, down in the Cambridge area. And it was for a large family that had, in fact, if we go back, they actually used this 18 months ago. So 18 months ago, they had some plumes in black on about 7 different limousines. Mm. Unfortunately, 18 months later, another family member had passed, and they decided they wanted the plumes again, but this time, because they're of an Irish heritage, they wanted them in the Irish colours. So we did them in the Irish colours, and they had 1 hearse and 7 different limousines again. And I kid you not, when it was just going through Cambridge, it was absolutely spectacular, because we went down there to take some pictures on their behalf, and people were walking past when they parked outside the church. People were walking past and actually stopping and saying, you know, and taking pictures. They didn't know who it was, just taking pictures of the cars and asking, well, you know, who's passed, you know, is it somebody famous? Is it, you know, what's all the fuss about? So from the family's point of view, they really got to celebrate, you know, that particular brother's life, and they made a statement with the fact that, you know, this is an Irish funeral, just simply by the colours of the flag. So,
wow, I think it's really important. I think this is so important because, you know, as we've said, we celebrate life. So this is like a huge thing. We take pride in our funerals. We appreciate, or we like to see, you know, finery, don't we? So I think that the plumes are just like the pièce de résistance, if I've said it right. It's just like tops it off, doesn't it? And a lot of our funerals, traditionally, typically, we stop traffic because there are always so many of us, you know, who are joining the procession. So, wow, that's beautiful. Are the feathers real?
They are indeed. They are. They come from South Africa, and they're genuine ostrich feathers, from a self-sustaining farm, I hasten to add. So, you know, there isn't a lot of bald ostriches running out there. When they pass, that's how the feathers, you know, come, and then they're dyed, and then they're treated in a special way to add water resistance to them, so the dye doesn't run. And because they're natural feathers, if they do get wet, you know, they do fluff out. Some people actually blow dry them, etc. So yeah.
Okay, so that's even more of a reason for us to be working together with this, because these feathers are, you know, from the continent, you know, authenticity every step of the way. But, you know, as we know, the service is there for everybody. Have you found that you get much support from our communities, or that you're known about really in our community?
It's interesting you say that, because if we take a step back, the whole thing really is about tradition, and the tradition of the plumes actually started in the Victorian times. What's typical in our culture, as in the Black culture for me, is that we celebrate, you know, our funerals. It's an event. It's not just a momentary. And something that I've been privileged to learn as I grow in this industry, that actually the way I view it now, it's about different cultures within a broader industry. So for example, when we did the Irish funeral, they were in the church and out within the best part of maybe an hour and a half. We know, and that's considered quite long, because I've been to some Catholic funerals where it's been like half an hour, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Within the Black community, it's, you know, we've got messages going on all sorts, choirs and what have you, and that's 3-4 hours. So it really does, you know, it's quite interesting to see the different makeups. And in terms of the support, or where it's coming from, when you reference our community, the first, I got to give a shout out to Sharon, Sharon Goodridge of Goodridge Milford in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sharon was the first person in the UK to take up the Plumes. And at that stage, we had no case study, nothing, no real true proof of concept. And if I'm honest, she said, "Look, we'll support you as someone who's trying to make their way in the industry." So she did. Since then, it's grown. Peter Broderick, up in Leeds,
Yeah.
he was another one of the ones who came on first in the first 2 or 3 years. I like Peter. Well, I did up until I realized he was a Liverpool supporter, but that's something me and him, we're going backwards and forwards about. But again, Pete was another one. But conversely, I will also say it wasn't a black thing or a white thing, so to speak, because other funeral directors that came on board, there's a guy down in Bristol, Adams Funeral Directors, and they work in the St. Paul's area. Great guy named Craig. Again, he was another one who came on board. Walsh, over in Bloxwich, they came on board as well. So in terms of the early adopters to this, there was actually quite a mix. To be fair, there's a good mix of people, because I think it was about the service. So it wasn't pigeonholed as, oh, is this something for the black community or is this something for the white community? It was just, okay, this is something different. And I think what we found initially was a natural resistance from the industry, because the funeral industry, they are quite unique. I think it is
That's one word, yeah.
quite unique. And it's almost a little guarded. They're very protective of their families, and understandably so. But once they took the time to see what the product is, understand that it adds value, then it wasn't about color. It was about, how can I add value to what you do? How can I help you give value to your families? And I think as long as you can demonstrate that, then that's what opened up the doors.
That's it. And I agree with you. Death is universal. It comes to us all. There's no escaping it. And I think that what I am quite passionate about is the fact that we are professionals. We serve everybody. We always have done in every industry. So why should this be any different? So have you found then that you've been well received by the people in the industry in general? Is that kind of like, have I kind of asked that question already? Have you found that there's been quite a good, healthy uptake in this? Because I think that the Plumes make sense.
And that's it. It's a case of making it make sense. But before you can make it make sense, you've got to have a conversation. Before you have the conversation, people have got to understand who you are, what you do, why are you here. Like I said, the industry is very unique. It's steeped in tradition, which, depending on which side of the fence you fall, is a great thing if you're established, you've been around for hundreds of years, like a lot of these families are, or if you're some of the newer young guns that are coming up that see it differently and we need to change this, we need to shake things up about. So in answer to your question, was it well received? I think, if I'm honest, there was a curiosity about it. Well, and like I say, the industry, as we know, they are quite unique in so much as it's almost a little closed, a little guarded, very protective of their families. So, well, who are you? Are you going to be here tomorrow? Are you fly by night? So there's a lot of that. Does it work? Why should we do this? I've had a good and bad reception. Being completely honest, I think when we launched at the National Film Exhibition Show, which is the big industry event, in 2017, it had never been seen before. So there's a lot of attention, which is great. A lot of people coming up to the stand, having great conversations. There was a lot of, well, oh, no, I don't think that would work, which is fine, because it's a new product into a new industry that is suggesting change. And when you're steeped that deeply in tradition, not everyone's open to change easily. So that's fine. But I think the one standout was two things. One, one guy came and said, "Oh, is this a black thing?" And I said, I laughed and I smiled and I said, "No, it's not. It's a serve your family thing. It's a, how can we help your family, or how can we help you
Yeah,
support your families?" So, lots of things like that, which you think really, but again, it's new. And then the other one was somebody walked past the stand and I tried to encourage her to have a conversation. And she turned and says, "No, I don't like it. I hope your business fails."
ooh,
I've never forgotten that. So there's been that, but then the flip side of that is that there's been more people being interested. Oh, that's different, and there's
yeah,
been a lot of interest. So it was hard, but again, I really do want to stress the challenge was more because it was a new product
yeah,
and it was a new way of thinking.
yeah,
That was the challenge. It didn't relate to anything else. It was about, okay, well, you're asking us to do something differently. Why should we?
yeah,
Why? And it was more that. Um, there were one or two, uncomfortable situations, as you expect,
yeah,
but for the most part, it was a case of do that. And for me, I was comfortable. I was comfortable with that because I fully believe in this. I
yeah,
know it adds value, uh,
definitely.
and now we're at a stage where I go to a conference and they go, "Oh, you're the Plume guy. Oh, it's Mr. Plumes or whatever," which
Yeah.
is which is great.
Okay, that's beautiful. As for the lady who said what she did, I would have just tickled her with the feather. But
I think that was just I was like, "Oh wow," and I smiled and I said, "No, have a good day," and just carried on.
that's
And
it.
so,
Keep it moving. Well, you said that beforehand you were working with the Chamber of Commerce. So you're coming from a really strong business background. And have you found that your business ethic, your skills and abilities have really helped you to positively push forward, as in past any of those barriers that have sort of come up, able to just bat them away easy because you know the business side of things?
yeah, but my business or my experience goes right the way back, and I'm gonna give away my age here, but hey, it's all good. I started out originally. My first job was as a YTS,
Right.
the youth training scheme.
Okay, so I'd say you're sort of roughly around late 50s. I'm playing.
Oh wow, that's cold.
I'm
Cold.
playing. I think we're around the same,
Yeah,
70s babies. Yeah.
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 And as a YTS person, started out, to me that was great. I had a suit jacket that was perhaps too big for me, walking around with this briefcase,
Yeah.
but it was good. But I've always been involved in sales and marketing, predominantly sales as a salesperson, key account executive, account manager, and I worked primarily in the IT industry for 20 years, working for BT, people like that, dealing with large, high ticket items, systems, and what have you that would cost, $500,000 upwards. So that experience of dealing with like the Times Top 1000 at boardroom level
Yeah.
gave me a solid foundation from a business point of view, managing people, managing expectations, managing customers, good, bad, and difficult customers, because they're in every industry wherever you go. Dealing with the fact of being the only person in the room, i.e., I walk into a boardroom and I'm the black guy in the boardroom, and there's several directors that you're dealing with. It's all of that has been great grounding for where I am to now. When I came out of the industry, I did a little bit of marketing consultancy for a while, and then dropped into the Chamber of Commerce because I thought Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce, not a bad place to be. And whilst I was there, I dealt with a number of organizations from, the one-man business to multinationals. So in answer to your question, all of that, gave me solid grounding for being in this business and, running the business as I do now.
Yeah.
So both, I say both aspects in terms of not just being an account manager or salesperson, but being a business owner.
Yeah.
It's a different mindset.
Okay. I would say that you really are in the right place because you mentioned that you're in Birmingham, and I know that that's where the NAFD are based. That's the National Association of Funeral Directors, and quite a few of the other sort of organisations they sort of get their starting in Birmingham as well, and we have quite a few black funeral directors in Birmingham as well. but I know that you have also sort of become part of the NAFD. So would you just be able to speak about that and what you do with them?
Yeah, sure. With regards to the NAFD, well, if we take it a step back within the industry, there's two. Sorry, my mobile phone's just gone.
Uh-huh.
And there you go. There's me feeling all cool and all good, and my mobile phone goes. Let me recompose. Let's go again. With regards to the industry, there are two. I mean, there's a number of associations and bodies, but the National Association of Film Directors is the main one, and then
Yes.
Or one of the main two, should I say? And then you've got SAFE, which is the Strategic Alliance of Independent Film Directors. Now, what's good is that there's certain standards that they have. So when we joined the industry and we were looking to, you can't just go in and just sell to the industry. You can try. However, being a member of either of those two helps.
Right.
Because it means that you've gone through a certain level of testing, and you can only become a member once you've been referred, or you have a couple of customers that write references for you. And the references need to come from people who's been in the industry a substantial amount of time or who are already members.
Right.
So what that does, the fly-by-nights, it just kind of puts a halt to them. In terms of how I became involved with the NAFD on the level that I am now, I'm now part of the EDI committee with regards to equality, diversity, and inclusion. And that started primarily from I'd had a negative experience at a conference. I won't go into detail, but it was something that I just felt was highly inappropriate. And there was a number of ways I could have handled that. One, I could have approached the people concerned and said, look, I didn't think that was appropriate, even though it was supposedly out of earshot. I didn't feel that was appropriate. But in my mind, I thought, you don't want to seem to be aggressive or put yourself in a position where that could be slung out. You've got to be smart in this. And I thought, okay, take a step back. Actually, what's the protocol for this? And let me do it that way.
Yeah.
Because I have no problem having a conversation with anybody. But again, I thought, actually, you know what? Let me find out what the protocol is and go that way. So I did. I made a complaint, and I have to say, the lady concerned at the time, the events organizer, she was onto it in a flash, and I do mean in a flash, and I think it's only right that I give credit and value where it's deserved. She said to me, I'll get back to you, Robin. I'm appalled. Let me get back to you. And within an hour and a half, she had the then chief executive of the NAFD on the phone to me.
Oh, okay.
Now, I was a little skeptical at first. Okay, let me see where this is going. And we had a conversation. And where I got a certain level of comfort or respect, should I say, for them, is the fact that it didn't feel like a tick box conversation.
Right. Okay.
It didn't feel like the sort of thing you hear on Sky Sports News, we strongly, are against this thing. And it wasn't one of those. We had a conversation and we had a chat. And then as a direct result of that, and he was very open, and it was a nice flowing conversation. Then as a direct result of that, I said, look, I understand some of these things are challenging, but I'm here if you want to tap into me for any sort of, questions or anything you want to ask, please. And I made myself available. And then a few months later, I was asked if I'd want to be part of that committee. And I said, yeah. And it was interesting because then I was the first Black person on the committee. So again, the committee was there and it was running, which was good. But I think then me coming into it now, it's a learning for everybody on there. And there's been some good conversations. Yeah. And I think, fair play to the NFD for that in terms of the action they took. It was swift, it was genuine, and certainly earned my respect and trust, which was why I decided to accept that when I was offered it, when I was asked to do that.
Perfect. Okay. I understand what you were saying when you said you were a bit skeptical skeptical. And, you know, I have experienced the same sort of reticence of, you know, when I've been approached by them, as you're aware. However, we do need representatives in all spaces. You know, the NAFD have the access to, you know, policy making and governmental ties. So if we are to have change, if we are to be respected, if we are to be recognized, if what matters to us is to be acknowledged, then we have to be in these places in order to educate and share, you know, our knowledge, our wisdom, and our intent for the future. So I really do applaud you for being up in there. And I know that you would be working quite hard to help to educate people within the organisation as well. And that can only have a knock-on effect on other people that interact as well.
Well, I think it's a two-way thing, because the door swings two ways. So I think because, you know, like saying, you know, I know you've had contact with them, because when I was first speaking to myself and Paul, when we had a meeting there, we did sort of put your name in the frame for them to make contact. And I think the great thing about it is, or the way I view it is this, and I said this to the chief exec at the time, I said, look, you know, it's not a black or white thing, or it's not you're wrong, we're right. It really isn't about that. It's about actually understanding how can we make things better by working together. The only way you're going to do that is by being in the room to have a conversation. If you're not in the room, you can't have the conversation, you're not going to be heard. It's also, again, for me, from my experience, because like I said before, this isn't new to me being a minority in an industry or in the room. You know, it's been 25 years, so look, it's water over the back, so to speak. But I also feel it's not a case of just going in the room and shouting, this ain't fair, we want this or whatever. It's actually going in there and listen and hear it from the other side as well. When I say the other side, I use the term other side loosely. I mean, as in hear what's being said, because a conversation is two-way. Yeah. So yes, you know, I may, or people may have a legitimate gripe about something or whatever, but actually listen from the other end as well. You know, what's happening, how can we make things different? Well, okay, you know, well, we don't currently do that. What's your thoughts on this? And conversation, it's all about conversation. And you've got to be in the room though. We've got to be in the room. And I think, if I'm honest, being very frank, and look, like I say, you know, we're friends, even though you age me a bit. You know.
Don't crack.
Well, if I'm honest, I think if we talk about we as a community could do better, or could help, is actually wanting to be in the room, not just sit on the sidelines to say this isn't fair, this doesn't happen, you know, and all the things that legitimately, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of legitimate gripes, don't get me wrong. However, in order to move forward, we can't just sit on the side. We've got to get in the game. You've got to attend. You've got to show up. You've got to understand, and you've got to bring our experience to the table. And there's people who've got far more experience than I have in this industry who could add value as well, I believe.
Yeah, okay. It's what's interesting, you know, you've said a lot that I sort of am noting and we'll probably come back to in our second hour. But, you know, I always thought it was for the NAFD funeral directors. It never occurred to me that it was also for service providers as well. So this really is a good space for anybody who is within the industry to plug into, isn't it? It's
sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, yeah, as a unique service provider, because your service is unique, I would say.
I totally agree, even though I'm biased.
And I think that's what I like about the work that I do as well. Maybe that it's not unique, but I suppose how I'm sort of packaging it, it's not, you know, everything is individual, and I'm trying to introduce a flow to it. But it really is the best place to be, because they have all the connections to the funeral directors who need your service. So I just want to applaud you on the work that you've done and getting into that position as well. Would you say that it's necessary? Because, you know, we've spoken about this not being a colour thing. You know, everybody is going to die. Would you say that it's necessary to have more Black funeral directors or people within the institution?
In what sense? How do you mean? In terms of, I think there's a number of ways you can look at it. You can say, well, okay, you know, there's not enough Black funeral directors. All funeral directors seem to be white, etc. And you could take that view, but I think we've got to take a step back and look at it. And this is the way I viewed it. The country, the population is what, 2% Black, you know, so to speak, or 5%, etc. So before we even get out of bed, you know, there's a difference there. And that's just the fact. There's nothing wrong with it. It's the way it is. Yeah. I think also, I mentioned culture previously. Yeah. Now, with regards to, from a cultural point of view, the Black community was always a little bit averse to death. It was always a little bit like, you know, be it obeah or what have you, and all the various things. There's always been you know, we don't go near death. So where funeral directors were concerned, I don't believe, I could be wrong, but I don't believe there were many Black funeral directors early on, or as a culture, death was always something that was frowned upon and left alone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, does that make sense what I've just said from a cultural point of view?
It does. And I really am trying to get to the bottom of that. I really am, you know, because it doesn't make sense to me in a way. It's like, so what really is happening here? Are we scared of death? If we are, then why are we scared of death? Where has it come from? Is this our fear? Is it rational fear? You know, are we losing out? Are we missing a trick? Is death what we think it is? You know, I've got many questions about that. So
much of which I can't answer, but I will say this: I do think that culturally there's been a natural fear of death. Absolutely. So, to my point being, I think that reflected in terms of, you know, people going into the industry. I think were fewer and far between anyway. I know my dad, for example, he'd have been no. You know, you know, and many of his generation probably would have been the same. So, in answer to your question, do I feel there's a need? I think the only time I'd think that I'd phrase it that way is if we feel that culturally something's been missed out. So, i.e., funeral directors aren't serving the community properly. So, you know, because of a lack of understanding of how the culture is, you know, because like I said before, I've learned so much just in the few years that I've been in the industry. For example, you know, some communities, I think it's the Sikh or Muslims, it's 3-day turnaround and that's it. You know, none of this, like we've done, like with my dad's funeral, is about 3 or 4 weeks before that was had. When one of my sisters who passed away was another 3 or 4 weeks waiting for aunts and uncles to come from abroad and all that sort of thing. So culturally, if you serve the culture and the community and you serve the community and you understand the culture whom you're serving, then for me, it's a colorless thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And I think, and I think with regards to having more Black funeral operatives, because that's the question essentially, I think it's a great thing, you know, absolutely, because of the great understanding of the culture. But my question would then be, are we saying we want more Black funeral directors just so they can serve the Black in the Black community, or are we saying actually we want more Black funeral directors, period, that can serve across the board and serve whoever, because they provide a great service? Because that's the thing for me, and that's coming back to myself and any challenges that I may have, you know, felt coming into the industry. I know, and I don't mean this, and I say this with confidence, that what I do is very good. I'm very confident in it. I stand by it. I know it adds value to the funeral directors. I know it provides a great service to the families. And the feedback that we've had is great. So I know it's great. So you know what? That's my thing. Be professional at what I do, provide a good service. Something goes wrong, handle it. Don't run from it. Handle it, get it sorted. And for me, if you have that sort of mentality, then you know what? Yes, of course, there's going to be challenges along the way. Yes, there will be a little bit of resistance. And look, make no mistake, because this is the way life is, there will be some sort of, there are going to be challenges that we'll face because I'm a black man in the industry. I get that. Yeah. However, and that's the real elephant in the room. However, is that the majority of my day? That the majority of my experience? Absolutely not. Yeah. Is there support? Is there, a lot of people along the way, be it black or white, who's been very supportive of me and what we're doing? Absolutely. So I think the mindset for me is how am I going to serve this industry? How am I going to serve this community? Yeah. That to me gives me a great chance of being successful at this.
Yeah, that's what matters, isn't it? It's the level of service overall. And, our death is death, I think if you can serve our community to the point where we're happy, then you can serve anybody. Because if anyone's going to tell you about yourself, it's us, isn't it? First, before anybody else. I've got a comment here from Andy. He's saying it's ingrained because our death rituals and practices have been misrepresented. The quick turnaround with Muslims and Jews is not cultural, it's a practical thing, the heat and body decay. Okay, thank you, Andy. Yeah, it is, which is why, we tend to embalm. I personally, I suppose this isn't really in your remit, is it? But for me, I do wonder whether we are holding on to our bodies for longer than we should. I think that the quick turnaround is actually a good idea, but then I think that has a knock-on effect with grief and all that kind of stuff. Maybe a conversation for another day. But yeah, thank you to Andy for your comment. There are many misrepresentations, and so for that reason, we do have to be in the right places. So
I think just from my own understanding, I think, great feedback from the gentleman who's obviously made that particular comment. I think the question I'd ask is, of the people that do this, of the cultures that do the 3-day turnaround, what's the, where's it most common? Does that make sense? So is it, so is it, okay, within the black community, are there any that actually do a 3-day turnaround? Or do you find it's mostly in, even though it's from a practical sense, I completely understand that. Even though it's from a practical sense, is it mainly Jews, Muslims, etc., that do it, be it from a practical sense or what have you? So that's just a curiosity for myself, I think, as another learning point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, certainly something to consider. Yeah. Okay, all right. Well, we are coming to the top of the hour. I'm going to close this hour now with Anita Baker, Body and Soul. Another favourite of yours. I was just trying to butter you up. Like, how can I make Robin feel comfortable on this day? So here we go. Anita Baker, Body and Soul. And we will be back after the break with part 2 of our interview. Oh, yeah. We are back for the second hour. You are listening to Passion Radio, and that was Pretty Brown Eyes by Mint Condition. I really have to say, seeing as like Robin and I have been discussing the parity in our ages, I have to admit, back in the day, I was bashment, I was jungle, I was drum and bass, I was jumping all over the place. As I get older now, I'm really appreciating, the music, like the R&Bs and the soul and all that back in the day, because I wasn't that kind of person. I was just like fully charged, I was just in it. But you're a musician, aren't you?
Yeah, I'd say more so as a hobby player, but yes, I'm a bass player. Raised in church playing bass, self-taught. I use the term self-taught loosely because there were bass players around me that I got lessons from, but essentially self-taught. And you learn to play in church. And church, I'm telling you now, and there's a million musicians out there would agree with me on this, is probably the best place to learn, because when they start singing, when the people start singing, especially the older brethren,
Yeah.
you've got to get it like that. There's no, it's in this key, what they just start singing, and you've got milliseconds to find it. So your ear is well trained, and yeah, it's good. I do miss playing. I still play now and again when I can, and we'll do the odd show and stuff when I can. But a lot of my friends have gone on to do greater things, touring and all the rest of it.
Oh, because it's demanding when you're in the church and they start speaking, they start singing. From the first line, you have to know the song, the key, the timing, the everything in it, and just pick it up and just carry on. And it's so seamless. But I suppose you don't often get a warning as to what hymn is coming or what song's coming next.
No, you don't. And and you have a very limited, it's probably different now, but certainly when I was growing up in church, you have very limited time to get it turned around, because if you didn't, you would hear from it through the mic. They would turn around and says, and they would let you know. But you know what? Honestly, I wouldn't change that for the world.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change that experience, that church experience, and that being raised that way, especially musically.
Yeah.
Wouldn't change it, because it gives you, it trains your ear for one, but it gives you a vibe, a feel for when you're playing, and that's something you can't teach.
No, it's in you, isn't it? And it's I think it speaks a lot as well for our culture. Um, I think that a lot of our culture is embedded in the church. And I would say as well that as we move on, I think that we are losing a lot of authentic culture. And that it's kind of morphing into something. The same person, Andy, earlier on, he continued to comment, and he said that it would appear that in all aspects of life, as a culture, planning for the future is not something we appear to do, i.e., some not at all. And I have to say this. I was watching, I think it was through at the end of lockdown. There were some concerts, there were some park festivals that happened, and they were filled with loads of Black people having a great time, dancing, singing along with the music and everything, as we do. And I just saw these snippets and I thought to myself, if I could just go on that stage and just say to them, have you prepared for, the end of life? Have you thought about, I'd probably get pelted with bottles, wouldn't I?
No comment.
But, I really do think it's something that we need to be preparing about. And I know that you said that your father passed away recently. How was that with regards to the whole thing? I was speaking with Maxine last week from Bronze Ash Funerals, and we were saying this is a performance. When somebody that we love dies, regardless of the scale of the funeral that we have, this is a performance. So how was that for you, being part of such a big family and having a father that touched so many lives in such a positive way?
I think by the time my father's funeral came around, I'd already had practice with my two sisters previously.
Right.
In terms of being emotionally ready for that. Like I said, my first sister, she passed in 96, and the second one in 2014. My first sister was 29 years old, and my second sister, she was 52 years old. So in terms of that whole thing, it was, I think by the time my father came round, it was, you know, it was prepared, so to speak. And I think when he passed, it was 93. So he had a good run.
Right.
And it was time for him to go, in terms of him not suffering anymore, you know, because he was suffering in a prostrate kidney, etc., and all the things that came with that. So that as a family, we were ready for him to be at peace. Obviously, it touches you emotionally. You're never going to get away from that, but there was an acceptance, and the fact that he was happy. I kid you not, you know, a couple of weeks before he passed, was like, you know, why am I still here? I've done everything. Yeah, he was antagonized. And I think the best way, and I will come back to your question, by the way, I've not, you know, I haven't forgotten it. But I think the best way to describe it is that if you imagine you and all your friends, yeah, you know that there's this great party going on. It is the party of a lifetime. You have a special ticket to get in. You need this ticket to get in. Don't care who you are, no ticket, no entry. You can't do the, oh, I know such and such a door, no ticket, no entry. All of your other friends, literally, they're in this party, they've gotten in already, and you're the only one who's there with your ticket. Now, everything else around you is still going on, but you need to get in that party. And that was my dad, because all of his friends, all of his associates from his, the sort of Windrush generation, a lot of them had passed on. His two closest friends, they'd passed on already. So literally, it was almost like the last of the Mohicans in that regard.
Yeah.
And he's like, look, I want to check out. So, so yeah, it was time, and I'm at peace with that. With regards to the funeral itself, and it's funny you touched on planning. My dad had everything planned to a T.
Okay.
Everything planned to a T. There wasn't much to do in terms of, there wasn't any sort of last minute .com running around panicking. Not at all. Not at all. My older brother, who was the executor, he said, he went through things. My dad had planned this from as far back, I think, as 2017. He went into a particular funeral directors. And I'm going to touch on something here because this is relevant to earlier part of the conversation we were having. The funeral director at the time, my dad wanted a particular funeral director. Yeah. Now, they had done a lot of the Black funerals in Birmingham. My dad knew them personally. Yeah. My dad had conducted a lot of services alongside them. So they'd worked alongside each other the best part of 30 odd years or what have you. Yeah. Fast forward to my dad passing now, because my dad was a retired minister, so he wasn't in touch as much. We go to the funeral directors concerned. They'd been taken over by one of the big corporates. Now, it was still the same family name, but they'd been taken over by that particular corporate. Now, we could have just gone through and just said, well, oh, well. But I personally made it a mission to track down and find that particular funeral director, simply because it was about the personal service and the fact that he would have known my father. He did my first sister that passed, he did her funeral. So to me, it just made sense. It would be more personal. I managed to track him down. I hadn't spoken to him for years, didn't really know him. And the minute I said, oh, I'm the son of Mr. Watson, he said, oh, Lenford. He called him straight by and he hadn't spoken to my dad for 10 plus years.
Right.
He knew his name. And we got him to do the funeral. And he was genuinely honored. And he said he was privileged because he knew my dad. So that made it even more personal. So we knew it was in good hands. And he was alongside the graveside. And I say this in terms of, we're talking about Black film directors, white film directors, etc. But the easiest thing to do would have been to sort of get a Black film director. It wasn't about that. It was about who knows my father. And this guy did, Bill Scott, and he was just awesome. And he knew, and he actually, by the way, he was shoveling dirt on my dad's coffin as well, which is something that funeral directors, they don't normally get involved because that's a personal space. But no, he did it, and we didn't ask him to. He just did it.
He did.
And that was those little touches, that personal thing, because it was then personal. He wasn't a funeral director. He was like part of the family for the day, and those things are key. But yeah, my dad's funeral, it wasn't, it was genuinely a celebration. There was the best part of 600 plus people there. As you can imagine, it was streamed online as well. You know, the viewings last time was something like 3,500. So he touched a lot of people. And that, for me, when I heard some of the stories, that's often the case at funerals about my dad and the people he touched. It was just like, wow, that yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah. To you, he was daddy, but to people out on road, it's amazing. And I think this is why I love funerals so much, because it's the opportunity to look over the person's life and for people to come up to you and say, you know, your dad, he done this, he done that, he said this to me, he was this, he was that. And, you know, there are some places sometimes when I go to Leicestershire, which is where my family is, and they, you know, they see me, grown men still cry for my dad, you know, and that's what touches me, because they knew him in a way that I didn't. He was just my dad, you know. And so I think it's the honoring of the life that really just does it for me. But you were saying in the first hour of the show, yeah, that the Plumes are just one part, one service that you provide. So can you tell us about the other service that you provide as well?
Yeah, sure, happily. We supply, because there's a lot of ways that people choose to remember their loved ones, and that's changed. That is such a big change over the years. If you go back a couple of decades, it's all about the ashes in the urn, and Granny or whoever will be sat on the fireplace, and you know, God forbid if she fell off whilst you were hoovering, that's Granny gone. She's in the Hoover bag, you know. So you know, and I'm not being distasteful when I said I'm just being lighthearted. So please, no offense to anyone out there, but it is something that, you know, has changed over the years. So we've now gotten to a stage where you see it in jewelry, you see it in glass, and that's great. And what I do, and what we do here, we have memorial crystals,
Right.
where we'll take your image, so picture and literally laser engrave it into a solid crystal, and you can have it in 2D, you can have it in 3D, and especially the 3D ones are just so stunning in terms of, you know, people look at them, you know, and I was searching before the interview to see if I had one, and they're all at the office, unfortunately. But you can actually see them online. You can actually see them at processionplumes.co.uk /crystals. And you'll see them there. We do a range of sizes as well. And for some people, just having that there, I've got one of my two sisters. You've seen it on the thing, your website, in a heart shape, and people are just like, you know, finding different ways to be able to remember their loved ones, and that's one of the things we do. And we find, again, a lot of people find peace. It's with, look, you know, being in this industry, one thing I've learned, that there's a number of different ways that people will celebrate someone's life or remember them. Some are like quite, you know, it's an introverted thing, which is fine. Others, it's a bit more shared, if you like. And yeah, this is just one of the other ways. So that's something we do as well. And it's a quick turnaround. Send us an image and it's back out to them within 3 days, 3-4 days, depending on availability. And we've had families buy 20, 8 at a time. Yeah, because it's that thing. They'll take their favorite picture and go, and we do that for them.
Okay. So is this a glass, like an award type figure, or is it an actual, like, not rose quartz, crystal quartz crystal?
It's a canine premium crystal. Canine will probably not mean anything to anyone, but it's solid. And when we meet, because obviously we'll meet soon, won't we? I'll show you, you know, they're quite weighty, and you can have them in, you know, there's a number of shapes and sizes. We do them in key rings. We do them in the memorial candle style, where it's got the little groove at the top where you can put your candle in. We do heart shapes. we do prestige, and we do award type things. But we find that, when it's for a family member, they tend to go things like the heart memorial crystals, the prestige and stuff like that. But they're all on the website.
Beautiful. Okay. And I guess as well, as we say, life is temporary. Do you get many dogs and cats being memorialized in this way? Animals.
Well, I mean, you laugh. I mean, I think as a country, we're known as animal lovers, and we've done some for cats, dogs, and they look just as great. And sometimes, in fact, people don't only have these crystals, and I do want to stress this, not only when they've lost somebody, they've done it, when, to celebrate someone's birthday or something, or a wedding or what have you. So, they're for whatever you want them to be.
Yeah. Okay.
This is I have done cats and dogs.
You have. Okay. All right. So when my pooch snuffs it, sorry, I'll know where to go. But this is really important to know, because yes, I talk about dying, death, and grief. Yes, that's the area of life that I'm really interested in. But really, it's because it's about life. It's about celebrating life. So, the crystals that you have, I suppose, are like little markers of life. They show that we live, and
exactly.
It's so important that we be capturing those moments. I think oftentimes we go through life, and when we lose somebody, we kind of forget that they were living, we were living. We get so caught up in the 9 to 5 and the whole grind of life that we forget this is life.
It is, and I think that, like with the crystals in particular, it's about, you see, the thing about memories, they're a moment in time.
Yeah.
It's a moment in time. Now, I guarantee you will have, from your days of jumping around like a Duracell bunny, you will have, plenty of memories, that you can capture and that you can remember. And those memories are often captured in images, especially nowadays that, you got a camera on your phone and everything that you do. So we simply transfer those to a crystal.
Beautiful. Right.
So, so an image of, one of the ones we did recently was for a young guy whose mom had passed away. She passed away, I think about 5 years ago, quite young, sort of 50, mid-50s, that type of age. And he had a picture. We did a picture of him when she was holding him when he was like 6 or 7, and he was hugging and kissing her. So for him, that then, it wasn't about a crystal. It was about, that's a permanent memory that's locked in, that he has that, pride and place, and it resonates with him. So that's the power of doing something like that.
Yeah, really powerful, because it speaks volumes, doesn't it? And in that way, when you have these memories, I often say, we don't die, we continue, we live. And the more we remember, the more we talk about our loved ones, the more they are visible to us, in these honorable forms. I don't know, maybe the easier it is. But, I suppose it's different for everybody. But wow. Okay. So how would somebody get in contact with you? Can we have your details? We're not even nearly close to finishing, and I will get you to repeat them again afterwards. But yes, how would we get hold of you if we wanted to use your services?
Right. Okay. Well, there's processionplumes.co.uk, and that, that's the first place to go. We're also, our socials are Procession Plumes for both Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter it's at Procession Plume. That darn Instagram, darn Twitter, I needed just one more character, but on Twitter it's at Procession Plume. And then of course the most direct way is telephone number 0121 456 1722.
Perfect. So if somebody lost a loved one, can they come straight to you, or would it be better that they go through their funeral director?
I'm always a good starting point. And I'll give an example of that. Maxine, who you mentioned down in Bronze Ash. Now, Maxine isn't yet a Plume client, as it were, but one of her families found us online, contacted me direct. I was
Right.
then able to supply it and then worked with Maxine to get it done for the day. So if your funeral director doesn't actually supply the plumes, that's not an issue. Get in contact with me because we're more than likely speaking to them or about to speak to them anyway, and then we go from there. So that's all good.
Right. Okay. All right. And I want to ask you another question, but I don't know whether it's, I don't know. I'll ask. Do they get to keep the plumes afterwards?
No.
Yes.
Right, okay. No, the way the process works is that it's the funeral directors will buy a set of plumes from me, normally 8. They
Right.
have whatever color they wish, be it black or their corporate colors. So like Peter, for example, Peter Broderick, the first set he bought in black. They used them really well, enjoyed them, and I'm pleased to say he's come back and bought another set 2 or 3 years later. Second set we did him in his corporate colors, in his
Yeah.
company colors. That's fine. So that,
Silver and blue, I think.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, silver and blue. Now, if say Peter has a family that wants them in the Jamaican colors, Peter would then contact me and hire those from me, which is just the feather parts. It's because the vase is a twist cap, you twist it off and the feathers can come away. We'd send those to Peter, he'd put them on his vase, use them, and then return them to us. So the funeral directors have a set, and they can have the standard black or what have you. If the families want the color, they ask them, and then they get in touch with us.
Beautiful. Okay. All right. That works. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. All
Can't
right.
just keep my phone's buzzing the whole time. Sorry about this.
Okay. Oh, because you're popular, because business is popping. That's good. And has been since what, 2017? Because that's when you started, isn't it?
Yeah, I joined the company in 2017 when they were
Right.
just ready to launch. I think they've been doing things in the background preparing, and asked me to sort of help out, initially helping out in 2017. And that's when we did the show. So my first thing was come straight and prep for the show and everything. And I've been there ever since. Daryl and his wife, who launched the company initially, they retired from the business in 2020, up in sunny Gambia. So good luck to them. Yeah, and I took over the business from there, and I'm now sort of running with it. So we were called the Plume initially, and then I went through a bit of a rebranding process and changed it to Procession Plumes now. And yeah, this is us, and we're going from strength to strength.
Great. Okay. And I know that they are not your parents, but we're talking generational wealth here, really, aren't we? Because it's a business that can be carried down through the generations.
Yeah, it is. It's something that, because look, death, or the business of death is guaranteed. It's going to be around this is why you have the funeral directors that are 4 or 5 generations deep. And this service, it is something that will only get better and better. I'm sure, I envisioned Plumes being on top of cars that are flying cars in the future, because flying hearses and what have you. But it's definitely one to watch.
Yeah. Wow. And can I ask this question, a bit of a sneak peek? Do you plan to add other services to under the banner of Procession Plumes?
I think, we're always looking for ways to be able to add value. That is my thing. How can I add value to what I do? If I don't feel it's going to add value to the funeral directors and families that we work with, then, because I've been approached, we've been approached, as you can imagine, by a number of people on different things. And it's something that I think what's most important for me right now is I think we've got a great offering in terms of the plume, and the crystals is a good addition to that. I want to do those really well.
Yes.
For the customers and people that I'm serving. And as I'm going to do those really well, then I'm sort of happy with that. Obviously, from a business perspective, you want to he was interested in ways of developing and growing. But I won't do that at the cost of the service that I deliver.
Perfect. I find that I don't consider myself a business person, but I'm finding, or I believe, I feel that find that one thing that you do and do it good, and really, really rinse it to the max. Just make sure that you do that. I suppose that's staying in your lane. I don't believe in competition. There is enough room for everybody. We are all going to die at some point. So, anybody, I would say, who has anything that they want to do it, whether it's connected to the funeral industry or not, just get in there and get it done, because we all add our own sort of accent to different aspects of any work we do, anything we touch. So, wow, I have a message here again from Andy. He's asking if there are any other events that the plumes are used at or for.
Andy, we did like a job. No, it's, that is something, and now you've sort of shoehorned your way into a sneak peek. So that is something that we want to, that we do want to expand into. So because it's about a procession, which is why part of the reason why I changed the branding from just the plume to Procession Plumes, because the procession can be a wedding procession. It can be things like proms, look, baby showers and things these days. It's all, everyone's going a bit sort of mad in how they do things, or they're being different, or they trying different things. So, answer to your question, Andy, yes, the plumes can be used for other things. If people want a procession of cars, for anything, be it a funeral, be it a wedding, then yeah, absolutely, we can do that. I think the one stipulation that we've always said, the plumes aren't designed for speed.
No.
They're designed for show. They are designed to attract attention, and obviously funerals don't tend to go that fast. So that's the beauty of them. So whatever you're using them for or want to use them for, then absolutely, as long as your drivers recognize, and I guess if you're doing a procession of some sort anyway, you are going to want to take your time. As long as it go above 30 miles an hour, you're good to go.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, we are interacting here. So Andy has said because he is ex-army, so he was in the army in his younger days, I imagine. So that's why he has an interest in that. And I suppose, procession, when it comes to is it passing out and stuff like that? I know probably different brigades, or I don't know.
Absolutely. We again, and this is a direct answer to you, Andy. So, for example, for the King's procession, actually did some, unfortunately, we weren't part of the procession as much as I would have loved to have been. But we've done plumes in the red, white, and blue. So, again, I would imagine, as someone who served his country at some point, as a pass out or what have you, then it can be used for any type of ceremony. That's not a problem at all. And I would imagine if he's army based or whatever whatever regiment he served, RAF or what have you, that their processions are it's going to be a slow moving thing anyway. So these will be perfect for those. So I'd be more than happy to discuss that with him.
Okay, all right. And on hats as well, or am I taking it a bit too far now?
Now you're taking the mic.
All right. I'll pull it back.
No.
Okay.
They are suction cups, and the idea of them is that they go on the top of a car. You can't miss them. And you know what? I just took some back to the office yesterday from a funeral we did just the weekend. Also would have had one and shown you. But they are beautiful things. If you don't believe me, go to the website, have a look at some of the gallery, or go on my socials, and you'll see the Irish one in particular. We've not uploaded it to the website yet, but you can actually find that on our Facebook page. So that's at Procession Plumes on Facebook or Instagram. Have a look, and you'll see exactly what I mean.
Perfect. Okay. All right. And when I was speaking to a sister a few weeks back, and I was telling her that I had made contact with you, she had actually asked whether you supply feathers.
I know a man who does. So yeah, I'd probably be able to help her out with that.
Right. Okay, cool. I'll
Yeah.
let her know. I don't think it was carnival related, but yeah, she was asking.
Yeah. Well, that's a celebration of life, isn't it? So it's all good.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think that's what all of this comes down to. What we need to recognize is that we need to be celebrating life. So in whichever way we do it, it's important. It's really important. So many of our loved ones pass away, and the family members are struggling to find a photo, you know. So it's about recognizing that we are alive, we are living, breathing, and let's celebrate that and keep going. So, okay, as we come to the last 15 minutes, is there anything that you would like to say or share with regards to your experiences?
What, in life in general, or the fuel industry, or
Yeah, just anything. Anything. I'm going to leave it open.
you might not want to do that. No, I'm changing my mind. Joking. No, look, I say this with all sincerity. For me, life is a wonderful thing, and I genuinely mean that. I'm not just saying that. And I tell you why I say this, because over my lifespan, my very short lifespan.
Very short.
Thank
Short
you.
of mine.
I've experienced a number of things. There's been a couple of times when I could have lost my life. And ranging from when I was in my younger teens, epilepsy being one, really bad, and could have gone then, and then a little bit later on in life. So within the last 10, 15 years, a couple of experiences that were, pretty scary or hairy in that regard. My first sister, when I lost her, she was 29. My second sister was 52. So I saw that to say that, actually, you know what? Live in the moment. Live in the moment. I genuinely, and I get this from my mother, actually, because my mother, I love her to bits. She's awesome, but she's as mad as a box of frogs. I'm not joking. She really is crazy. But all of us, we get our zest for life from her. My dad was very stoic, very serious, but my mom, she's crazy. She's 88. She wants to ride a scooter. She's happy to buy some Timberlands and or some John Martins, i.e. Dr. Martins. So enjoy life. Honestly, because we don't know what's around the corner. We're losing people who are at a young age. Just the other week, I've just heard of somebody who was our age group who sadly and passed on. And it just, that does resonate with me. And give back again, not trying to sound like a scratch record where you can. I used to be a basketball coach. I did that voluntary for over best part of 12 years, unpaid, and it meant 2 weeks, 2 nights of the midweekend, games at the weekend and all sorts. And it wreaked havoc with my time. But when you then get someone who sees you, Coach Howard, they still refer to you as coach, and they're now young men with their own children, and they say that one thing you said to them that wasn't necessarily game related, it's life related, and they've held on to that, then that's quite humbling. So for me, live life, give back where you can. In fact, Peter himself, actually, because you're interviewing him soon, right?
Yes, I'll be interviewing Peter on the 12th of.
Yes. Ask him about his days as a basketball player.
Okay.
Yes, because you see, it's a small world, Mr. Broderick. He is. So again, it's just live life. Life is too short. There's room for everybody. Genuinely, be in business, be in life, and you know what? It's okay to be nice. I know that may sound corny, but I genuinely mean that.
Yeah. Even if they are a Liverpool supporter.
Let me see. I'm gonna have to come back to you on that one.
All right, then, give it some thought.
Give it some thought. I have my limitations.
Okay, all right. But Liverpool does look really nice in the crystal. I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, that's because it means they're buried for the season. So yeah, I'll take that.
Okay. So who do you support?
Manchester United.
Right, okay,
It's not
okay.
that I'll get some grief after the weekend, but yeah, Manchester United.
Yeah,
So
I was going to say I don't follow football, but I'm under the impression that Manchester United was playing Manchester City and that it didn't actually go very well for one of the two. I'm not quite sure which one. I,
meaning.
I don't want to rub any salt into any wounds.
Hold on a second. Let me just get that bandage. And you can just. I knew you were coming, so obviously I was prepared.
You were.
Well, yeah, you know what? The better team won at the end of the day. That I can say. So hey, but it's
Yeah,
okay. As long as it wasn't Liverpool, I can live with that. And you can pass those words on to Peter.
I certainly will do. Absolutely. Well, it has been really nice speaking to you today. I want to, oh no, apparently Bolton Wanderers are the best.
Now, I tell you what, I don't know who that is from, but I will say in the days of when Sam Allardyce coached them when they had JJ Okocha and a number of other world-class players, yes, absolutely. So I will tip my hat to them on certainly during that era.
All right. Okay. Well, that's coming from Andy again. So he's avidly listening. So,
Hello, Andy. I feel like I know you.
he might actually get in contact with you. I just want to ask as well, as I've said, we're coming to the last 10 minutes of the show, but what business advice would you give to somebody who is looking to start up their business? Not necessarily within the industry, it could be anywhere, but where would you say, how do you start? What would you say?
Oh, I think firstly, know your products. The
Okay.
product or service that you're going to be providing. Is it up to scratch? I guess more importantly, is there a market for it? Because you could have a great product, there's no market for it, it doesn't make sense. So is your product up to scratch? Is there a market for it? What's the competition like? So all of the fundamental sort of thing you see on Dragon's Den and stuff like that, they are worth watching because you pick up so much from them. And I'm still learning myself. So know your product, know your market, and do it well. If you're not passionate about what you do, and it's cliche, you hear it all the time, but if you're not passionate about what you do, you won't enjoy it. You will tear your hair out. You will have sleepless nights. This is all part of running the business. And, I started with an afro this morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got
So,
more hair than me.
yeah, it's easy and it is hard. But if you truly believe in what you do, if you truly believe in the service you're providing for someone,
Yeah.
and that it's good, it will get there. It will be hard, but you gotta deliver a good service. If you deliver a good service, and goes right back to what I said earlier, know your product well, know the service you provide well. Things will go wrong. There's not a business in this world that can tell me they've not had a customer maybe unhappy about something. The time to show up is really then, because that's when you're going to be judged the most. The glossy brochures, Facebook pages, everybody loves those. But when you got to fix something, that's when a company really comes into their own. And that's where a lot of people will say, actually, that company was good, because I had this issue. Hopefully you don't have an issue in the first place, but be prepared to deal with it. But know your product, know your market, make sure there's a market for it, and serve it well. Make sure your customer service is on point, and be professional, for God's sake.
Yeah, that's a big one. Be professional. I think that many people don't actually realize that they're actually providing a service as well that could be a real business. I think sometimes we are of service and we don't realize that we are doing so much that could actually be monetized. So I suppose if you have a passion, if there's something that you enjoy, look to see how you can kind of make it into a business. And there's no such thing as failure, really. Just try and keep going, or is it do and keep going?
Yes, something like that. And here's the thing I promised I'd say to you that I wasn't going to tell you off air. So
Yes.
it's a story. Integrity Funeral Care.
Yes, more.
Paul McLean,
And
great.
Darren. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Paul McLean, lovely people. I've worked with them for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. So again, another Plume customers, and I've known Paul for the best part of 30 years. Now, their clients, they've had people, they've had a family who's used them a number of times. They had the Plumes and Jamaican colors, great. They performed a great service. The same family came back to Paul and said, "We'd like some Plumes again in the Jamaican colors." He's gone, "Okay, fair enough." Said, the difference is they wanted to take them to Canada. Now, this demonstrates just how effective the Plumes were and how strongly the family felt the Plumes, just to make that difference. So when Paul and I spoke, I was like, this is not something I'd normally do. And we went back and forth and said, actually, you know what? Let's push the envelope, as you would say,
Yeah.
and see what we can do. And we came up with something where I actually supplied the Plumes to Paul, who then supplied to the family. They took them to Canada, used them on the funeral, and actually brought them back. And that was it's not something that happens all the time, but everything was in place. I think what I was most proud of was the fact that they liked the Plumes that much, that they said they wanted to take them to Canada, and Paul and I made that happen for them. And they sent us pictures as well. And, the funeral directors in Canada was asking them, "Oh, where have you got these things? Where they come from?" So, I was quite pleased with that. So a big shout out to Paul and Sharon for that. And I've got to say a last shout out to Omega Funeral Services, 2 young ladies, Black ladies coming into the business in the Birmingham area. They're a few years old, but they're doing really good things as well. So a big shout out to Amelia and Alicia.
Lovely. Well, please be sure to tell them about FACFO,
Absolutely.
the Federation of African and Caribbean Funeral Operatives. You yourself are listed on there as well. So I really look forward to speaking with you more, getting to know you more. And, the purpose of FACFO eventually is that we also become worldwide. So don't be surprised if there is a Procession Plumes in Canada, the Caribbean, on the continent.
Oh no, I won't be surprised at all. No, that's if we could get to that stage, that'd be awesome.
That's it. It's the way forward. Okay. Well, thank you so much once again for joining us today. I've really enjoyed it. And we are going to be seeing out this show now with Anita Baker, Body and Soul.
Thank you.
No, sweet love. So thank you. Okay. Take care. Enjoy the rest of the day.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.